Hi, I'm Fish of the Justice League. This is part 2 of my Uber's tips video. Once again, I'm being helped by Brainmaster, who's streaming my voice as you watch a picture of my medic. Just going to cover off a few extra things onto what I covered in the last Uber video, and obviously testing if this audio is a little bit better quality. If not, let me know, guys. What we're going to cover off this time is a little bit more on the crits Krieg. A couple of people have asked that I cover a little bit more on crits, sort of how to play the crits. Crits is quite an interesting, brings an interesting thing for when you play medic, because you don't have anything to save you in a key situation, so sometimes it heightens your awareness when you're running crits. Some of the advice I do give to medics out there is when they're practicing playing medic, just to run crits for a full night, because what it gives you no backup. There's no opportunity to save yourself with Uber, and it'll give you a little bit better Uber controls, like when to pop it, when not to pop it. When you are running crits, you mainly want to use it on the demo man. The crit stickies are more lethal, but there is the opportunity to crits 2 soldiers. When you're using crits, usually the aim has to be to take the medic down. It has to be to spot where their team is, so you need to get a spotting class and obviously get that first crit sticky on the medic. After that, it's kind of laying some crits down. It's perhaps having a soldier. Always have a soldier and backup. When you're crits in a demo man in, you want a soldier at your back, making sure that a scout doesn't come around, because the first instinct of another team is obviously to come onto you and try and kill the medic. That's probably the last thing I'm going to cover on crits, unless I get any further questions with crits. I think crits pretty much is an impact advantage to the medic. It's very much something you'll use if it's a last resort, something you might be very comfortable with. I wouldn't advise running it for a full map. The only time I would say is if you want to practice. What I'm going to go through now very quickly is sort of how to improve yourself at Uber. Where a lot of medics tend to suffer on their Ubers is perhaps where they're either popping it too early or too late. So if you are one of these people who think, am I maybe Ubering too early? Am I not trusting my soldiers enough? Do have a night where you say to your team, right, tonight I'd like to run with the crits. I know that we're probably going to lose a few rounds. We might not do as well as we usually do, but it's for me to understand how long I can survive against certain classes. So it might be that a scout, whereas you think you're paranoid you're going to die, it's not that you'll die as often as you would do. Soldiers, you know that it's quite easy to dodge and surf rockets. So run crits for a night. It heightens your Ubers. It makes you a little bit better when you use the Uber. The other thing I was going to cover around sort of when to use Ubers, a lot of medics suffer. They think they need to hold on to it for the longest opportunity, which isn't always the right thing, because when you exit the Uber, you've got a lot of weak players because you've been trying to hold on to that Uber, and you kind of go into a really grey area of you've kind of held on to it too long and you potentially lose a key class. So when a team's Ubered onto you in a defensive Uber, unless your team are fully healed up, they're fully ready to go, I'll be popping that Uber sort of when they get near to me, or when my demo man starts to get weak. I'd just pop that Uber when that player's weak, because you don't want to lose anyone. The key to a defensive Uber is keeping those players alive, so you exit the Uber with 6 people alive. You've got enough health to go onto them, take them on in a DM fight, and obviously don't chase them down. If they're going to pull out from it, yep, spam a little bit, see if you can get a key pick, but don't chase them down too much. So one of the things to look at for medics is go back through your demos, have a look, did I pop too early? Could I have held on to it a little bit longer? So that's one tip with Ubers is, don't hold on to it for too long. It's not like 3 seconds is going to make a massive difference to the game, because those 3 seconds extra, the team would have probably pulled back far enough until you can get onto them, and it becomes a really tight affair. And when you exit the Uber, you might have overcommitted, have weak players, and they could wind up wiping you. So don't be afraid to pop it a little bit earlier. Pop it, don't drop it. It's a very common phrase in TF2. So one of the other things I've been asked is when to save someone and when to let them die. And this is really tricky because a lot of TF2 is situational, so I couldn't give the perfect situation. So it was a question from one of the medics I mentor, when would you be popping that Uber to save a soldier that perhaps is overextending? I wouldn't perhaps pop that Uber purely because that soldier needs to learn limitations. The Uber's there to defend with or attack with, is not there to save them from their stupidity. And people need to understand that if you're going to poke and try and do a little bit of damage, it means that you keep yourself alive as well. So I'm going to use an example of Gully. choke. If I'm defending 2, the other team have 3. My soldier, my demo man would poke, choke, have a little bit of spam. My soldier would obviously be taking spam in return. The soldier needs to manage his health correctly, so I don't have to use the Uber. So if a soldier was to die and choke, it's solely his fault. I wouldn't expect a medic to Uber, because if you were to Uber that soldier there, you've got to Uber your soldier, your demo man through the choke, and by the time you get on their team, you've pretty much wasted your entire Uber. You're going to pop at you, you're going to wipe out, they're going to cap 2, you're going to lose a round. So as a medic, do encourage your team to manage their own health. You're not there to just Uber them because they've been silly. Do let them die. It is going to create a problem for you, but it's probably going to be less of a problem letting him die than using the Uber in and wiping out as a team. So use the Ubers under your direction, as a medic. If you're going to have an aggressive Uber, you want to Uber when you say you want to Uber. You're going to push through onto them, and that's when you're going to use the Uber. You don't want to pop the Uber because you've been forced. Don't look at it like if a team's forced you to Uber, do use that Uber, but use it at the last opportunity. So a soldier poking and not doing an awful lot with it, whereas a soldier, say, pushing CP2 granary, sometimes a soldier can come forward and you need to pop it there. That's a fine pop. If anyone's sort of not sure around any other situations, you're more than welcome to add me up on Steam. Join the tip group on Steam groups. It's linked in ETF2L post. Ask me about situations. It's really hard for me to give feedback if I don't have specific situations, and I'm just giving a general sort of a broad idea of when I use my Ubers. I wouldn't save it on a soldier that's just pointlessly spamming. Instead, I would be using it under my own discretion. One of the other things that's been asked by my mentor medic is on some parts of certain maps you Uber as you walk through a door, yet on other parts you don't. It's really hard for me to sit here and say map by map where you would Uber through a door, but there's certain maps where they're always got sticky traps, and the whole idea of Ubering through a door is that you Uber out, you get out into that area and you get onto the team. And what it usually means is if you Uber through a doorway, it's because their team is close enough for you to get out that door and get on top of them with the Uber and wipe them out. And that's why you Uber through a door. You don't want your soldier to go through that door, clear the stickies. It has to be a speed Uber. It's something that needs to be quick, really direct, onto their medic and kill him. And that's why you Uber through a door. So, for example, Snake Water, if you was to push in last right sides, you would Uber through the right door if they haven't got an Uber, because you don't want to be delayed. You just want to get out of that door. You want to get 3 people through that door onto the medic and kill him. So when it comes to Ubering through doors, maybe I'll start to cover that when I do my map tips, but that's probably a question more, just add me on Steam if you've got any other questions around that. But Uber through a door if you want to get out and quick, and you need to have spotted where they're standing. Use your scouts to spot where are they standing. So the next question I'm going to come on to that's been asked again by one of my mentor medics is, in what situations would I Uber a scout or scouts? I quite like a 2-scout Uber, and there's a couple of maps in where I use a 2-scout Uber. The idea behind a 2-scout Uber is usually that they don't have an Uber charge themselves. I usually will use this in close situations. So Snake Last is a good example of where we like to use 2 scouts, and it's to push through, push their team back, because 2 scouts are quite lethal, get into the medic, hopefully kill the medic, and then get onto the point not long after this, because getting onto the point with 2 scouts is a very quick cap, especially on last. So one situation where I would use it would probably be Snake Last, and probably Gully Last as well. I like to drop 2 scout Uber in Gully Last. I find that very helpful on Gully Last to push 2 scouts through. But the idea is, if you're going to use a 2-scout Uber, set your scouts up and say which scout goes first. Otherwise, you'll kind of have a situation where 2 scouts run through the door and one of them dies to stickies, which isn't as smart as just pushing 1 scout through first. He'll probably blow the stickies on that door, fire your scout into them, chase through with the next scout. Your 2 scouts also have to know what target they're aiming for. If the medic moves, then move to the next target, and you have to focus fire for that to be effective. So Ubering 2 scouts through is effective when you focus the fire, you take down a key class like the demo or the medic, and then you get onto the cap and bring your other team in. But you need to be creating that so your other team, and you need to know where your heavies are coming in from as well. So if you was using Gully, pushing from the right side, mid-right last, pushing in there, your heavies might join you from the water, and that's where the medic can fall back to. The last bit of the Uber, fall back to your heavies, bring the heavies in, spam the team down, and hopefully that'll become quite an effective push. Again, any more questions around that, feel free to chat to me in the Steam group. I'm really grateful of questions because it gives me a little bit more content and what to use in these tip videos. I do want to try and keep them quite short going forward because it's easier for me and Brain to just record shorter videos. This may be the last one I do on Ubers, purely because I'm not sure if there's an awful lot more to cover unless I get a lot more questions. So I'll leave you with the last few tips. If you're going to practice with Ubers, run crits so your team are a little bit better at defending you without relying on that Uber, because teams can sometimes think it's okay, the medic's got Uber, it's okay, we can relax, we don't need to be as aware as scouts anymore. But by running crits, it's kind of a situation where they need to be watching you for the whole 30 minutes. There's no Ubers to fall back on. And it'll also create it'll make your team play a little bit more aggressively. So you can't just sit back on a crit charge. You need to be pushing with it. So it will make your team practice a little bit more at pushing. And another tip is to kind of practice your Ubers. What I like to sometimes do is I do occasionally, not as often as what I used to, I do occasionally join up on a public server. I do like the old Dust Bowl servers, and I try and rotate the Ubers around. I try and practice targeting different people during an Uber, because on a public server what happens is you kind of get 5 people try and come in on this Uber, so I try and practice on just focusing on 2 people, keeping them alive. I kind of just use them. I've always found that to be quite good practice. Obviously join pickups. Pickups can be quite frustrating to practice Ubers on, because pickups you kind of don't as such have the team play as you would in a mix. Obviously there's always plenty of mixes going on. That pretty much concludes my Uber video. I think the next one that Brain and I will be doing from this tips point of view will probably be pushing and defending, as it's a question I get asked quite a lot. Hopefully I'm going to have the Snake Water video out by the weekends. It's just finding time with Brain to do it, as we're both very busy people. Just want to thank you for listening. Obviously I've been Fish. Join us in the Steam group. The link is on ETF2L. I do appreciate the questions. I love to chat to people about TF2. I'm always up for answering questions. I still do demo reviews, so don't be afraid to hit me up with a message for demo reviews. I've been